Hi, Roy Kerckhoffs here on a rainy day in Carlsbad, California. In two videos, I'm going to show you how I created my hand-colored black and white photograph, which I call Good Morning Coachella. In this first part, I will show you how I planned the photo shoot using Google Earth, the photo shoot itself, how I stitched together and edited the photos in Adobe Lightroom, Photoshop, and a plugin for Adobe Photoshop called Color Efex Pro, how I made the stretcher bar frame, the floater frame, and how I stretched the canvas. In the description below, I wrote down a timestamps menu of all the stuff that I just mentioned. In the second part, I will show you how I hand-colored the image, meaning how I painted in the sky with opaque oils and colored the rest of the image with transparent oil paint. But let's start by heading over to my computer and start up Google Earth. In 2017, I was taking part in the Southwest Art Festival in Indio, California. And in the distance, I saw Mount Jacinto, which is over here. And I wanted to get a good shot of it with the sun rising, shining onto the mountain. Needed a shot of it unobstructed. Wasn't exactly sure where to get it. Like from the polo fields where the show was held, there's too many stuff in the foreground. I mean, I cannot go lower than this, but all these palm trees were on the way. So I had a good clear view of it. So I used Google Earth while I was at the show on my phone to see what would be a good spot, a good location to get a good shot of it. Here I'm at the polo fields. So I needed to be a little bit more elevated. So I was thinking on more the north side, maybe a little bit further away. And I was thinking I would have to go somewhere over here, where these hills are. The Interstate 10 is about in this area here. Here it goes. And I know that at some point it goes up the hill out of the Coachella Valley. Let's see if we can find it. Okay, this is the highway that leads to the Salton Sea, and here we have the I-10 exiting the Coachella Valley. So let's see if we turn. Mountain is in the back here. So then I was looking somewhere over here, and I know there's a rest area here somewhere. I think it might be right here. I touched down here, like what I'm doing now, and then I noticed that that was still not a good view. You can see these hills here, they're still in the way. So I needed to find another location. Then I moved more this way, on the other side of these hills. It's a beautiful area. And somewhere over here looked good, like a nice clear view of the mountain. And of course it needed to be accessible too. I had to get there by car. And then I noticed this little area here. Is the view I was looking for. Let's turn. There's nothing in the way here. And I thought this could work, so I just had to find out if I was able to get here with my car. It's not private roads or private property. So I needed to know where I was at here. There's a street view here. And there is. So this is called Airport Boulevard in Thermal, California. So then I went to Google Maps, but on my phone, just showing it here on my computer. And so let's find the Empire Polo Fields. So that's where I was at. And then directions to, so it was called Airport Boulevard in Thermal, California. And it was at the end of this road, and there was some kind of aqueduct here, I think. So this is really where I want to go to. And it looked like I could. So that would give me this view of Mount Jacinto. Kind of like that. So the day before, the evening before, I went here to check it out. And then the next morning, I went there very early. Got some shots, but it actually, I used a too high ISO value. The photos were a little bit too noisy. So I actually went back in January, no. I actually went back in December of 2019, and that's where I got some good shots of it, which I will show you in a bit. Well, we have arrived. It's like 6:15 or so in the morning. And it looks a little bit hazy. That way over there is Mount Jacinto. So that's where the sun will come up soon. In about half an hour. Well, the good news is that the mountain is getting clearer and clearer. And now you can see the belt of Venus is appearing, which is the reflection of the sun in the atmosphere when the sun is still below the horizon. And that's a wrap. I imported my photos into Photoshop Lightroom, as you can see here. I shot many more photos than the ones I'm going to work with here. This is only a sequence of 28 photos, but these are the ones that turned out to be the best. These photos were shot in manual mode, as you can see over here, which is recommended as we are going to stitch these photos together. And among all of them, you want to have the same exposure. The earliest sequence of photos I shot with different ISO values and exposure times because it was darker earlier on. But the sequence I'm working with here was taken with an ISO value of 100 because, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't want as much noise as I had a year or two earlier. an exposure time of 1/15 of a second at an aperture of f/10. I chose this narrow aperture to reduce the amount of vignetting to a minimum, which also helps in getting a perfect stitch. I had my Sigma 100 to 400 millimeter lens on my camera, and I had set it to 310 millimeters. I wanted to include enough sky, and that's why I have these two rows of photos. You can see this range here is the lower row, and I wanted to make sure I had the foreground with the valley here and the other row up here, from here to here. I wanted to include enough sky. We'll have to make sure though that there's about 25 to 50% overlap between the photos. You can see here this peak shows up over here, and also have enough structure between the top row and the bottom row. You can see between these two you need some kind of structure or something going on at the bottom here, otherwise Photoshop will have a hard time recognizing the images to stitch them together. If you have only sky, it usually cannot do it. So let's select this range of photos. Right click and then choose Edit in, Merge to Panorama in Photoshop. Then 99% of the time I work with cylindrical. I think that works the best for me. Check the box Blend Images Together and have all of these unchecked, because again we chose with a narrow aperture of f/10, so we don't have to check this box Vignette Removal. Then we click OK. This takes a little while. I will go through this quickly though. Speed it up a little bit. So here we are, and you can immediately see this didn't go quite well. So the problem is indeed what I mentioned earlier. I didn't have enough overlap here, so this area right here is where this photo would have been, and this photo would have been here, and that's why we have this gap on the top here. So there was not enough overlap here for Photoshop to recognize where it should put these images. It's not a big problem though. We'll just delete these two layers, and we're going to crop the photo. So I'm going for a 2:1 aspect ratio. And what I would like is I would like to have the peak of Mount Jacinto about in like 1/3 of the image on the left, say about here. And then I would like this part here, the valley, in about to the right 1/3 of the image, and have a little bit of these peaks here. So this is the area where Big Bear is. Let's see, maybe about like this, a little bit up. This looks pretty good. Like this. Then we hit Enter or Return. And then what I'll do is I'll pick the lasso tool, hit L, choose this area, Shift Delete, Content Aware Fill. Oops, no. First we go to Layer, Flatten Image, and then we'll do Shift Delete, Content Aware Fill. There we go. That looks pretty good. So we save this image and go back to Lightroom. This is the image, and we're going to edit it in Color Efex Pro 4. We'll do a copy. It's always good to keep the original files. So actually this looks pretty good already. So I like to use the detail extractor here, which you can find under the landscape filter library. But you can see there are some artifacts at the top here. So we're going to remove those. So I'm going to add a negative control point up here. There you go. This doesn't matter really in my case what I want to do today, because I'm holding Option and moving this now, or Alt on Windows, Option on Mac, because I am going to print this image in black and white and then color it with opaque oils. The sky, that is. Paint in the sky with opaque oils and color the rest of the image with transparent oils. So whatever's going on in the sky here doesn't really matter to me because I'm going to paint over it anyway. But let's have a look at the detail extractor here. So I would like to add a little bit more still, to get all this detail down here. This is looking pretty good. Now I'm going to add a filter. And I want to add a black and white conversion. Looks a little too dark. It's going to slide the brightness to the right. And a little more contrast. That's looking pretty good. See if you add a little, the shadows, we want that a little darker. Yeah, maybe like this. Okay, and then we'll hit save, and then we're ready to print the image. Going to print it on my Epson P20000 at 36 by 18 inches. But before I do that, I want to show you how large actually this image has become by stitching all these individual images together. So look over here, this image is a little more than 18,000 pixels wide and 9,000 pixels tall. And that's why I like to shoot these panoramic images, stitch them together, so I can print this at really large formats and still retaining the detail. Let's just zoom in back here where these windmills are. You can see there's still a lot of detail, even though we're zoomed in at 100% right now. Okay, so let's print this and color it. This is my miter guillotine, which I use to cut stretcher bars and molding. It has very sharp knives, and when I push down this paddle at the bottom, it doesn't saw the wood, it cuts the wood at a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to cut my stretcher bar, find 36 inches. frame molding can also be cut with this tool. And since the photo is 36 by 18 inches, I'm going to cut the frame, this is called a floater frame, a little bit larger than 18 inches on one side. So I'm going to do 18.5 inches and 36.5 inches. So I'll make sure that the black part lines up with the top of the stretcher bar. I hope you liked this video. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to check out the next video, part 2, on how I paint and color the image.